All right. Now, according to, again, the Hegelian dialectic. Dialectic means communication, and that's oversimplified by a lot. But the dialectic, the push and pull between two people, it sort of ends up like a tug of war. Two people pulling in opposite directions, and the truth is the ribbon that's used in tug of war that determines who the winner is. This person is correct. This person is correct, but by themselves inferior to the capital T truth that rests between them when they've linked their hive minds together. Now, here's the deal. This is what Hegel says that a lot of you will disagree with. He does not like people who stand in the middle because they're not doing anything and they may not be fully articulating their opinion here in the middle. He thinks that the truth is in the middle, but he doesn't like the idea of people standing there believing that they have the truth. He thinks that the center is the right position only if you have two active participants who aren't defending this position. They're defending this position over here. This person by arguing this position out here on the extremes very well, and this person over here arguing for position over here very well. Only then do you get the benefit of these two computers linked up. And you can see this. You can see people orbiting around this idea way before Hegel. For example, well, okay, this was after Hegel, but Malcolm X, for example, didn't like centrists in America. He loathed them. And then you have people in the ancient past, let's say like Christ, who gave the metaphor of he doesn't like tepid water. You should spit out tepid water. He says cold water is valuable for when you need cold water. Hot water is valuable when you need hot water. Tepid water doesn't serve much purpose. That's a drastic oversimplification and maybe mischaracterization. But the idea is that the central position is found through the tug of war on the outsides. Okay. Now, what does that look like in modern day? Well, let's talk about the political spectrum, the right wing and the left wing. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to pretend that the left wing are angels and the right wing are angels, because we don't actually have to come down on one side of the spectrum or another to make this point. What we're going to pretend is that we're only going to give the arguments from the left wing that are truly, purely good. There's a lot of bad actors on the left, and we're only going to give the right wing position that is good. There's a lot of bad actors on the right. But what we have here is a tug of war over the middle. So let's talk about the pure left wing and the pure right wing, what that would look like, sometimes known as liberal or conservative. And let's use a metaphor, okay? You have a house. In this house, you have two people, let's say you have two people living. One person is very moved by a commercial that they saw, and they want to donate $55 a month to that cause. The other person responds, well, doing things that are nice for people is good. We should try to help, but we give $160 a month to various causes already. This person would say, I'm concerned that maybe if we give $55 a month, that would be too much for us. And if there was a catastrophe to occur, there might not be a buffer against catastrophe. We wouldn't be able to weather that storm. In essence, this is a comparison of a pure liberal argument and a pure conservative argument. The liberal example, characterized at least in 2019 by being open and loving and nurturing and tolerant, and then the conservative. And think about the word again in its purest form. If we're only dealing with good actors over here, to conserve, the conservatives would be much more worried about the long-term potential disaster, the theoretical disaster from the future. So you have someone saying, let's help people in need, and you have conservatives saying, well, I'm not sure that we can afford that. Okay. Okay. Um, this tug of war, if this tug of war happens, then we can see the truth three-dimensionally. Okay. Again, if this is, I've been very careful to choose my words to show that this isn't necessarily, in its pure form at least. Um, what's up, guys? I'm recording a video right now, so. You are? Yeah. Well, I guess I can pause it. All right, so where we leave off. Now, you can sort of divorce this idea from American politics, by the way, because this dialectic that we've described between liberalism and conservatism is as old as recorded time. The oldest I've gone back and looked at is ancient Rome or Republican Rome, and this same basic argument was happening back then between those that wanted to conserve and those that wanted to give. Or that's a very, very, very oversimplified, almost to the point of falsehood. But that's that. Now, again, back to this example. There's nothing wrong. As a matter of fact, there's something positively good about the impulse to give, but there's nothing wrong with the consideration of, well, how much should we give? How can we give the most possible without giving too much and potentially doing theoretical harm to ourselves in the theoretical future? So that's the impulse back and forth. Uh, and again, in order for this system to work properly, there needs to be free and unfettered communication between these two people, or figurative people, for this to happen. But that's not exactly what happens. There are landmines all over the place that we place down that make it difficult to speak to these ideas. And what happens is a distortion. And when that distortion occurs, eventually, if this, let's just say, for example, this is the true center, this is the capital T truth, what happens with figurative landmines making it difficult for people to speak with one another, this starts to drift. If we have it, if it's central, it's good, but then maybe it starts drifting this way, and that's what you think might be happening. If you're a liberal in today's modern political environment, you think that the communication problem is making us drift too far to the conservative side. And if you're a conservative in today's 2019, you think that this dilemma here, this lack of ability to speak between each other, is making the United States drift too liberal. So it becomes confusing and muddied in how you can communicate. Now, one particular way that we can freedom of speech is enshrined by the federal government, and so far they've done a pretty good job of not getting in the way of what we can say and not say. But what's happening is that the people themselves are the ones putting these landmines down of things that you can or can't say. And so, even though we've had this granted to us so that we can have an unfettered conversation between us, we're accidentally creating too much garbage in the middle so the conversation can't happen properly. We can see this happening in the 2016 election because the day before the election, media was reporting the fact that Hillary Clinton had a 90 to, in some cases, 98% chance of winning based upon the data that they had, Trump being this wedge right here. And then the day after the election, we realized that it was 50-50. Well, what's going on? Well, in this particular case, this is an example of it appears as though people are not willing to admit that they were voting for Donald Trump. Why that's the case is very open for debate. But for some reason, the people who were on this side of the circle didn't feel comfortable speaking, and so there was a distortion. There was the perception that Hillary Clinton was going to win by a landslide when it wasn't the case. That hints at, again, the muddied center that makes it confusing. There's not an unfettered conversation between left and right in America right now, which can have a big, big problem. Okay. This is not new at all. The first time it was officially studied was 100 years ago. It was called the Shy-Tory problem. The fact that people weren't saying who they were voting for or what they believed politically in public was studied first, like I said, 100 years ago, but it's probably been it's definitely thousands of years old.